Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're finally going to do my 2025 preseason bait power rankings for this year. Obviously already fished one tournament this year, the Bassmaster Open at Clarks Hill. I wanted to shoot this before then, but I was just so busy trying to get ready for that tournament that I wasn't able to shoot this video and have all the baits that I have for my top 5 going into the season before that tournament to shoot that video. So I will not be including any baits that I had success on in Clarks Hill. I'm going to do a follow-up little early season rankings update after the nation qualifier at Pickwick, because then I'll have 2 big tournaments under my belt for 2025, and we'll see some movement in the bait rankings for sure. But right now it's going to be one honorable mention and then my top 5 predictive preseason baits. These are baits that I think are going to play huge for me this year when I look at kind of the schedule, where I'm fishing, what time of year, and also baits that I've had success with in the past, but really just kind of curated a small list of baits that I think are really going to help me be successful this year. So started off, honorable mention is going to be a tube. I did not throw a tube that much last year, but late in the year I kind of found a little shallow deal with the tube, and I had a lot of confidence with it, and I think I'm going to try it a lot more this year, whether it's for smallmouth or even largemouth. I think it's a very versatile lure that a lot of people really have either forgotten about or they just don't really use it that much. A tube, honorable mention, doesn't make the top 5, but I think it's going to be a key bait for me for 2025. Number 5, now this might surprise some people, just given, the state of bass fishing with forward-facing sonar and whatnot, but I actually think a frog is going to play for me this year. Last year, believe it or not, I caught my very first frog fish. Actually, it was my first topwater fish of any kind last year, and really got to practice a lot with the frog on my home lake, as well as threw it a couple times in some other smaller tournaments and whatnot. Not only is it a fun bait, but I think it's going to be a pretty effective bait for some of the places I'm going this year. Certainly always play at lacrosse. Hopefully I can make lacrosse for the national championship. Now, that being in October, probably won't be as big of a player there, but the Wisconsin State Championship, if I am fishing that one. Prairie du Chien, also Mississippi River. This should play big, as well as some local stuff. I think it's going to be right around that time of year, that late July, August time. It seems like up here in Wisconsin, Northern Illinois, that frog can really be good, especially to get some bigger bites. So it's a bait that I've gotten some confidence in from last year, and I think it's going to play for me this year. But we'll see. Hopefully. That'll be a fun one. All right. Number 4 is going to be a swim bait. Now, I'm going broad here with a swim bait. Right in here in my hand, I just have a small glide bait. I've actually never even thrown a glide bait, but I plan on practicing it this year. Whether it's a glide bait or a boot tail mag draft style bait, that really was key for me last year in the last tournament of the year, catching me my PB 6-pound largemouth. I think it's going to be a bait I'm not going to catch a ton of fish on in terms of numbers, but I think there'll be a couple tournaments where I can get a kicker fish that can really kind of set me up, prop me up a little bit better because I decided to throw a bigger bait. This one being a 6-inch, I think I'm going to be throwing a lot more of the 8-inch style baits, though, to try to get those bigger bites, especially down south, where there are bigger fish than naturally up here, up in the north. So swim bait is going to be number 4, and that's really going to be based upon more of larger fish, kicker fish, rather than numbers of fish for this year. All right, number 3. This should be no surprise. It is a jerkbait. Jerkbait is a bait that I have a lot of confidence in. I love throwing a jerkbait. It's one of my favorite ways to catch them. But it's a bait that, late last year, it actually gave me a lot of confidence, and I learned a lot about forward-facing sonar by using a jerkbait. I think for me, it's kind of that balance between, I don't want to say fun fishing, but traditional fishing, blind fishing, right? I love fishing a jerkbait that way, but with forward-facing sonar, it was able to translate to me a way that I know how to fish, a way that I like to fish, and then apply that to the forward-facing sonar. It helped me a bunch. Caught a ton of smallmouth, on a jerkbait, whether I was actually looking at the screen or not. Believe it or not, even when I am using this on forward-facing sonar, there are a lot of situations where I don't even see the fish, and I'm just kind of old school fishing the jerkbait up shallow or up on points. But it's a bait I got a lot of confidence in. I think it's going to play for a lot of, obviously, the early season tournaments, but also if we get some of those fall tournaments, this really kicks into gear as well. So this is going to be number 3 for me. Number 2, this should be no shock. Just like last year, a drop shot is obviously going to be huge. I mean, I fish a lot around, here in Wisconsin, Chicago area, Great Lakes smallmouth. I mean, it's just a go-to. Confidence bait. I know it works with forward-facing sonar. I mean, not really much to say here, kind of a boring one. Not one of my favorite ways to fish, but highly effective. This will definitely probably be more of a numbers bait for me, rather than like the swim bait. That's going to be kind of on the higher end of weight, for those bigger fish in my bags. This is going to probably be a little bit more of a numbers game for me, especially with smallmouth. So drop shot being number 2. And this should be no surprise to anybody that knows me locally, seen me fish a little bit last year. Obviously, chatterbait, it's got to be number 1, right? For me, it's got to be number 1 for this year, going into the year. I'm not sure. I know there's a few tournaments that are going to set up well for a chatterbait, but it's just a bait that catches numbers and size for me. I have the most confidence in this bait. It really took off for me last year, and it was number 1 last year for a reason. I have no real reason to believe why it also couldn't be number 1. I am just putting it at number 1. I could foresee potentially, just because of the schedule, that this does not end up number 1 at the end of the year. But for right now, I couldn't help but put it number 1. I'm going to throw it a lot. Yeah, it's just a great bait for me, and it's a huge confidence bait. Now, that being said, this is number 1, but I'm going to put this as kind of a 1A, 1B situation. Now, I'm not going to actually show you guys this bait because I've never thrown it, but I'm just going to give you a little look here at the bait. It is also a bladed bait of sorts. It is one that I am super excited to test out for myself, and I think it could end up being more effective than the chatterbait for me this year, just because so many people are throwing chatterbaits. I think that mystery lure, we'll call it, we'll put it at 1B, chatterbait 1A, that bait 1B. Don't want to give it up yet, what it is, but I think it could be highly effective for me, especially in some of the bigger tournaments this year that I'm going to be fishing, qualifiers and opens. I think it could be a little sneaky bait that a lot of people don't know about. They're very, very hard to get, and they are expensive. And if it takes off, for me this year, I won't mind sharing it at the end of the year and kind of doing a whole video on it. But I've never thrown it. Really haven't seen or heard of anybody else throwing it. But that's probably because they keep it a secret if they do. But I've heard in a lot of situations when there's a chatterbait bite, it will outfish a chatterbait. So knowing that, I am super excited to test that bait out, but just a little sneak peek, and a little bit of prediction there for that one. So that is my top 5 preseason power bait rankings. I can already tell you just from Clark's Hill, and I predict going into Pickwick in a couple weeks here in March, that these will change. Some of these will naturally fall out because I either haven't thrown them yet, or I thought they were going to play early on and they didn't. So we'll see some mix up, we'll see some variety. I'll share some more baits with you guys. I appreciate everybody watching these videos. I'm hoping to get a few more of these more content-driven videos, generalized fishing videos out to you guys before my next big tournament, which is the Bass Nation National Qualifier at Pickwick Lake in Alabama in a couple weeks. So while the boat's in the warm shop, try to pump out a couple more content videos for you guys before we get to that tournament footage in March. So thank you all for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.